Hey everyone, and welcome to our next M2C podcast. To say we are excited is an understatement. We got the one and only Jesse Lipscombe on the call today. And if you don't know about who he is, you could Google him, you could do all that kind of fun stuff. We are about to be blown away by his leadership and just his mindset. He's such a phenomenal guy. And the reason why I share that, I met Jesse last year in 2024. We're 10 days into 2025 right now. But one story I just want to share real quick. I think it was like 6 in the morning. Kirby Anderson and I are actually neighbors. Kirby's heading to work, and I'm heading to go meet Jesse at 6 in the morning the day before Christmas. And I call Kirby. He's like, "What are you doing, man?" And I'm like, "He's like, you're never up this early." I am, but just not driving to work. Anyway, so I'm driving. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm super excited, going to see this guy. His name's Jesse. His book comes out January 7th. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that today as well too. But I'm gonna get to go meet him day before Christmas. We're fired up, like two brothers that have never met before. And I get there, and you know what? We just had coffee for an hour and just chatted, connected. Jesse set me up with some great mindset stuff, and we talked a lot about his book. But you know what? Jesse's a genuine guy, super kind, inviting and friendly. But I'm just going to pass it over to you, Jesse. Let's do a little bit more of an intro and we'll let the conversation take itself from there.
Yeah, I mean intro, sure. I'll tell you too. It was awesome because how far did you drive to come see?
A little over an hour.
A little over an hour, day before Christmas. But just in itself said a whole bunch about who I was about to meet. Like Corey takes interpersonal connections pretty seriously, and we met on a random LinkedIn. And I don't know, I'm sure a lot of us get those messages that happen. Usually, folks like, "Hey, what are you doing? I saw that we connected, and here's what I want to sell you." Usually, is how that goes. And we had a little chat and talked about what you were looking at the beginning, even though it wasn't necessarily right up my alley of what I was looking at or was interested in. We still were able to forge like a little bit of a connection. Like, well, maybe let's take this a step further and get to meet each other. So first off, I appreciate you driving up, and I love that you just take human connection as serious as you do, because it's probably at the heart of everything that I do. The most important part, I think, of life, in my opinion, is connecting with other humans in a very meaningful way, understanding how much more alike we are than not. We spend so much time, we say we're in this era of connectivity and technology, but even though we can talk to somebody on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, text, rarely do we get to connect. And those moments are super important to me. My background, I'm an actor, I'm a former professional athlete, I'm an author. I'm a singer, screenwriter, producer, a lot of stuff that lives under the creative arts umbrella. I consider myself a professional passion follower if I had to put a label on it. But since, a very young age, it's been a life of chasing dreams, grabbing dreams, big fails, big wins, but, continuously with that idea that, of course, I can. And if I can't, I'm going to try my hardest in finding out. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's who I am. I am a professional passion follower that thoroughly loves people and connecting.
Mm, amazing. Amazing. And you know what? Just being willing to meet day before Christmas, that answers that right there.
Yeah.
Passion follower and doing that stuff. So you
Although
absolutely
let me
didn't have.
throw in another piece. Meaning right before Christmas, it does mean that, but it also talks a little bit about my ADHD, because it was like, ooh, new, shiny. Yes, I'll step out and go do that. Of course, that makes perfect sense. So fair enough. A lot of the things that I do that are in many different lanes, a part of that comes from that. But at the same time, when you find out who you are, you can use all of the pieces to your advantage.
That's amazing. I think this conversation is going to go a lot in the tune of vulnerability. And conveniently, I just read a chapter in your book about vulnerability and how a lobster will shed its shell 25 times in its lifetime or something like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So or maybe for 25 days after it sheds its shell, it's now
Right,
vulnerable to people or to obviously threats and all that kind of stuff, right? And you kind of related to people, how they're too oftentimes too scared to take that, really shed that and be vulnerable and go through that experience because that's where the growth is happening and all that.
right.
Maybe talk about that chapter a bit and why you talked about it as much as you did and what your passion is there.
Yeah, I mean, I looked when I found out how lobsters grow. I thought it was kind of awesome. I remember I was looking at those giant lobsters in the grocery store, that we buy and eat. And I was also thinking, I'm like, they don't start off that big. So, a little Google, how do they grow? And then finding out that, they're little crustaceans at the beginning, and then their insides grow until there's no more room in the shell. So then they only have a couple of options. It's either like don't grow and die, or shed the shell, expose yourself, and be vulnerable before you grow a bigger shell. And you can do that over and over and over. And I kind of paired that with the idea of so often we get comfortable in our own zones, and we can't grow anymore because we've stopped exploring. We're protected, we're safe, we know what our yard looks like. As soon as we step out of it, you do feel vulnerable. But I also like to switch that word vulnerable to available, right? Very similar words, but different connotations. Oftentimes we hear vulnerable and we think that's negative, something bad will happen to me. But we say available, we're like, look at the opportunities that are out there for us if we're actually looking. And I like that there's four men here on the screen, because if I had to pick who needs to do that more than anyone, it would be us. This idea of being vulnerable and being confident in vulnerability. For men in the past, typically there's only like 2 or 3, maybe 4 emotions that are okay for us to be able to express. We can be happy, sure. We can be angry. We can be stoic. But there's so many emotions that we rob ourselves of. Usually that's that idea. We get insecure, we get vulnerable, and it's somehow goes against what we think being a man is. Right? We're supposed to be courageous, right? This is another thing.
Tell me why do we suppress vulnerability? Why do we suppress it?
Why do we suppress it? Because it's scary. It is scary. We don't feel safe. And the funny part is we talk about men being courageous and strong. What's more courageous than being able to cry with your best buddy and be able to show emotions publicly? That's scary to do, and that's what a lot of us don't do. So, that idea, that chapter, it's about that leaning into the vulnerability pieces, leaning into the being available. And not only is it going to help us emotionally, but like with actual opportunities in the world just open up when we start to step out of our comfort.
Yeah, you know what, Kirby? I just want to say one thing. Can I? So Glenn's a lobster fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what you're doing, Glenn, is you're just collecting all the data from the sea. That's all you're doing. You're a data
100%.
collector. That's what you are for a living.
100%.
Back to you, Kirby.
I want to show my vulnerability. I finished high school. I did 1 year of college, and then I did an auto mechanic trade. I can't read to save my soul. I'm practically illiterate. Is your book gone to audio version yet?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an audio version. If you like my voice, it'll be in your ear, which is great. And then let's talk about that, right? Because Kirby, you say right now reading not very good.
Impossible. I can't read. I got an analytic brain.
Yeah.
I get stuck on the first paragraph, even though my words and my eyes are on the third paragraph. My brain is already stuck on the first paragraph.
Yeah. Which is great. Audiobooks work for you though, right? Okay. Yeah. I got you. Yeah. No worries.
I was going to offer to pay for it if you didn't have it done yet. I was going to give you the money to get an audio because I really want to air your book. I've been with you for like 4 minutes now. I want to read your book. I want to know what you learned.
Yeah, I mean, I love it, Kirby. That's good. I mean, listen, don't pay for the audiobook. It's already done, but I'm sure by the end of this conversation, there'll be something we're going to co-invest with. It'll be beautiful.
I love it. You're going to make me rich.
Yeah, I love it. With knowledge and emotions and probably products as well.
Have you made your first million yet?
Have I in total? I think so.
How was that? Easy? Hard?
I mean, it was as hard as I made it. This is the thing, Kirby. Life is a video game. It is a video game, and everything is possible. And there's actually cheat codes available for people if we want to use them. So, making $1 million in my life, it was as hard as I decided it was going to be.
I found it really hard. But after I made the breakthrough, it got really easy. Making the next million was very easy. Yeah. I grew up with social racism.
Tell me more about that.
I'm an English guy that grew up in the province of Quebec. So do you know anything about Quebec?
I sure do.
Bloc Québécois is now our backup government. Literally, officially our backup government. They are so proud as a culture that an English person growing up in Quebec, it was not pretty. It was not pretty, man. Like, it was not pretty. I got in fights in Quebec City because I spoke English. People pounded me in the face with their knuckle because I couldn't speak French.
Right.
I was so proud of it. It made me who I am today. And that journey to get to the first million, I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize these gifts that I was given.
Sure, sure, sure. It's interesting too that you what did you call it?
Social racism.
Social racism. I mean, and I would say that I'd be careful tossing around racism in certain scenarios so it doesn't water down what it actually is. I mean, it sounds like tons of prejudice, without a doubt, based on the language that you spoke. But you know, racism, and we're talking when we talk about racism, we're literally talking about the color of our skin being the main ingredient on why the disparaging treatment and inequities they spoke. It's never one of those games where like I never want to play that oppression Olympics, but I also think it's important to let terms live where they live so people understand what those are. Not that one takes away from another, but they're different things.
You know what I text Corey after he sent me your Wikipedia last night? Corey, can you tell him, please?
Is this I'll just read it.
Because you use the word racist,
I
I think
said
in your wonderful, I want to learn more about it. Can I donate to your charity? I think you've got a charity or something I read in Wikipedia.
Yeah, yeah, you know, absolutely. And if we're talking about donating to, if I'm going to pick where money needs to go right now, it needs to go 1000% to the anti-trans rhetoric that's happening right now, where folks are very they're very confused with what's happening, and the knowledge and the education isn't there, and people are living in a fear-mongered world without actually understanding the facts. So if I were to put any of my dollars or your dollars anywhere, that's where they need to be.
So you want me to give you my money and we're going to put it to fighting and educating people about trans people.
That's 100%. That's
Okay,
right.
I'll send it to you when we hang up. Do you know where to put it or
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, yeah. We'll chat offline where it goes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
go to do it because I'm struggling with it. I feel that trans people are getting treated better than me.
You're 100% wrong, but that is a thing that happens often with white men. They feel when things start to become a little bit more equitable across the board, they feel like equity feels like oppression to someone who's never had to feel it before. So like I understand your feeling and I appreciate it, but it's actually wrong. And
Why can't the government pay for my wife's boob implants? Because I've been wanting them for years. My wife, I
so
like
you're
that
talking
bigger
about
boob,
cosmetic.
but they won't pay for it. But yet, for all, my kid can go and get paid by the government to change.
Oh, interesting.
I've
This is
struggled
great.
with that. I truly
So Kirby,
struggle with that.
let me help. I'll help you because what
Please,
happens?
please, please. I'm excited.
The reason you're struggling with it is because you are misinformed. So yeah, so because you want your wife to get cosmetic surgery because you want her breasts to look different. So we won't even talk about that because I wonder if your wife wants them as well. But that's besides the point. We'll go to that one shortly. But for the second thing is, you're talking about the government's paying for surgeries for children, as what you're saying, which isn't the case. That's not what's happening. Like a lot of folks think this idea of if they have a trans child and kids under 16 are getting things like bottom surgery. None of this is happening. It's not even real things. This is back to the whole fear mongering piece of actual facts that are occurring versus what people are saying. Because they're politicizing what they're doing is they're using trans children as like a political talking point to form division. And it's interesting too, you pick one thing so that people can rally around it. And the whole idea is only to rally around it so you can have like a really supportive base so you can get votes. It has literally nothing to do with the kids, it has nothing to do with creating safety, it has nothing to do with your wife's boobs. So none of these things that you need to struggle with. Even being able to easily say, I feel like I'm treated worse than the trans community, the fact that you can even say that lets me know how ill-informed so many of us are and why dollars need to go there. Yeah, go ahead.
I gotta. I hate cutting you off because I'm learning from you, but I've heard all that before.
It just didn't stick.
It just didn't stick. So I'm hoping that you can help me like get reassured. But I want to share a story with my kids. Went to a Christian school.
Mm-hmm.
When the bill, what's that bill? You probably know what bill that came out for LGBTQ and the transgender rule.
LGBTQ,
Yes,
II plus. Yeah.
yes, that one. We got kicked out of public school funding. Our school got kicked out of public school funding.
Mm-hmm.
We as parents had to go and take out of our pocket to keep the school running, all because we didn't want to have a general neutral bathroom.
Wait, you're telling me that's why it happened, or is that what you've decided?
That was what put at the top of the list. There was many other things.
Well, yeah, there was many other things.
But
Exactly.
that was the one that stood out, right?
It's the one that you remembered because it made you feel a certain way. So
Yeah,
there was a
or my principal or
sure, sure,
the
sure.
custodian of the school. Like that's what they pushed on
Or
us as
or or
parents.
it's or it's whatever the main person wanted to talk about the most that everybody heard and identified and
This is
felt.
what I'm saying,
Yes.
right?
So
So
I
what
want.
you, Kirby, no, I'm gonna cut you off for a second. See, what happened is you said there was a list of things, and the one thing you remember was this. And so now the talking point that you bring to me is this gender neutral bathroom was the reason funding got canceled. When that's actually not the whole story. That's the thing you remembered the most, right? There's a whole list of things, and then what you did is vilify just one community, even though there was a lot of things on that list that had nothing to do with said community.
So just to add, because I told you at the beginning before we start recording, like
Yeah.
at any time, I don't want to piss anybody off, but I'm good at it, right?
No,
So
no.
but
Kirby, being good at it, being excited about hitting hot points just to try to piss people off and not understanding maybe the gravity of the words you use. I think what has to happen is instead of trying to piss people off, it's like understanding the platform you currently have and being responsible with your words as opposed to saying, "Ooh, I got someone again. Look at them getting pissed off." So it's like wondering like what wins do you want to have? Is your win that you want to have podcasts with folks and find ways to get them upset? Or is it like we actually want to have some real conversations where you might learn something and maybe you didn't have to piss anybody off because you know what you're saying?
I use the wrong word in the right sentence. It's a technique I've developed. I would like to write a book, and I think with you, you're going to help me write a book about it. There's another theory called the 180 that we're going to get into later, but right now we're going to talk about Kirby loves putting the wrong word in the right sentence because it stimulates emotion with people. But that being said, I just want to share the backup. I would pay personally if one of my kids want to change. I would do it. I'm not going to suppress my kids if they want to be a transgender, if they want to be gay. I would support that. Want to bring it back to the school thing? I went to multiple meetings. And the reason, one of the main topic that I remember from my perspective is that they wouldn't sign the document for the provincial government to continue on to get the funding. So we separated. There is another program out there that supports private schooling. Guess what? They signed the documents then, and guess what the document was? It was the exact same document. I explained that to our team at the school. I was like, you guys are fighting about the fact that the school board is just pushing down the line what the system is dictating to them. And you're saying, I refuse to sign it, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're going to need funding. You're going to turn around and sign that document anyway, which they did do. So the redundancy of they stood their ground because they felt like they were being pressured into having a general neutral bathroom. And then they turned around and signed it. They said they would do it anyway because they needed the funding anyway from the system.
Kirby, are you angry right now?
Sorry?
Are you angry? You look fired up.
I'm passionate. I'm so
You look fired
passionate.
up, Kirby.
I love it, man. I love it.
That's good. It's good. Like I said, I'm not going to get fired up. I just like having conversations. What's your question?
My question is that you want me to put the donation into anti-transgender lobby group, which I supported because I don't think there's enough education out there. Because I've been trying since that bill came out to help do it, but I'm losing. I can't seem to do it.
Right. I'm with you. What's the question?
No, it's just the fact that I'm sharing the story, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm with you. I think so. I think this conversation even shows us how much education needs to be there. I mean, you said if your kid wants to be a transgender, you'll learn that like how to speak about these things in a proper, respectful way, which is a wonderful thing. If your child is a boy or a girl and decides they need to transition or wants to live their life the way they want to live, you're telling me you'd support them as you should. You're their parent. That makes perfect sense. It's almost like a no-brainer, right? Of course. Your kid should be able to live the life they want to live and be happy and be safe and not persecuted and not be vilified because of political gain. I'm with you, Kirby. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Without knowing the rules, like, is there age before consent, or is there where the age is like 16, 18, where they need parents' consent? Because there's a gap. There's a gap.
Of course,
there's a gap between that and then having men and women boxing against each other in the Olympics. So there's a lot of gap there, and so that's. I think that's part of the problem.
No, the problem, you're right. The problem is education. Like almost every conversation that we've had so far, full of holes, but yet this is the talking points and the rhetoric that get like argued, which don't need to be argued, which shouldn't even be a conversation because they're totally different things that we're talking about. So yeah, absolutely. But everything you just asked, it is so simple to find out.
Exactly.
You can Google that question and you can find out. You go to some trusted sources and find out. But most folks are a little too lazy to do that and would rather like argue around like a water cooler, and neither of them are coming with any actual receipts or proper evidence. And they keep spreading things that aren't true. This happens all the time. But the world's too easy to find information out if you actually want to know about it. If you want to know, be an ally, or you want to know more about the trans community, it's very simple. You can Google it. You can actually talk to a trans person and understand they're actually people, not just tropes. And then you start like, wow, wait, actually, I do care about this human being. I actually don't want to make this human being's life more difficult. I want to do everything I can with my platform and privileges to make life better for them. Like that starts to happen when we take it away from these little conversations that aren't based in fact, that have no research done. It's like, you know, whatever any of us do for a living, if some layman just came in and started just spouting things that make no sense and are wrong, and it'd be a frustrating conversation. We're like, well, come to the table with a little bit if you want to have this conversation, like show up. And I think a big piece of respect happens when somebody comes to the table after they've done some actual research. This happens all the time in film and TV too. So people will come to me and say, hey, Jesse, I got a great movie idea. I want you to make my movie. I'm like, all right, cool. Send me your pitch deck. I go, no, I don't have that. They're like, okay, well, send me your one pager. No, I don't have one of those. Okay, what's your log line? Well, I don't have that. It's just this guy meets this guy, and like, I have no time for any of that. Show me that you have done this work, and now you're at this stage, and you're like, okay, what do I do next? And then I'm like, oh, this is going to be a real fruitful conversation. We might have something here. But too often people come at that early stage, they don't even know what they're talking about, and they just want to see if they can push a button, Kirby, and see if they can make somebody angry. I'm like, come to the table with some information first, and the conversation flows so much better.
Yeah, but like mainstream media doesn't help. So like, there's a lot of misinformation that's intentional, also to get this debate going, to take the attention away maybe from other issues that are on the table.
What mainstream media are you talking about?
CBC, CNN, all those major networks, they latch on to where there's controversy. They latch on to divide the people intentionally. That's my opinion.
Yeah, interesting. So like the mandate of CBC is actually to give equal amounts of time and weight to different conversations that are represented by the entire country. So if they're having discussions, whether it be about Black Lives Matter, whether it be about the trans community, what they will do is they will offer facts and conversations.
Well, no, like Glenn, with a narrative, right? With a narrative.
Oh, actually, that's the mandate of the CBC is actually to not have that. Now, can you ever be fully objective anywhere as a human being? No, but the whole goal, the mission statement of it is to come as objective as you can about the issues that affect our country. There isn't a more unbiased news network that we have than the CBC. So if by chance, Glenn, you were like, I don't think that's the case, then what I would do, I'd be like, hey, Glenn, Kirby, let's pool our cash and let's create a whole nother news broadcasting site that you think would be something that makes some sense, right?
My taxes already pay for that, so I just like for them to do the job they're supposed to do. To follow their mission statement would be excellent. I would appreciate that very much.
I don't think that I would say that they're perfect. Of course, they're not. And oftentimes they even come back and put out statements where they made errors, and they do that publicly as well, which I think is a huge thing with people in general. When you make an error, to do that. Well, but I do have some real insight into the thing that you have surface knowledge on, right? So like the inner workings of CBC, I am privy to them. So I actually do know what I'm saying, and it's not a rumor, it's just what happens. I see behind the scenes with the teams and the meetings they have before they even discuss what story or topic they're going to use, and the amount of work and days and hours into that research from all walks of life. And then they, cut that into a 5-minute clip that's digestible for someone driving on their way to work. So, but the thing you're asking is the thing they do.
Probably very misinformed on the LGBTQ plus issue. But there's a lot of other issues that I'm very well informed on, and I collect a lot of data. And the data that the CBC and CNN, these other networks that are paid by lobbyists to propagate a narrative.
Yeah, you just used two different ones, right? So you said CBC and CNN. Totally two different things. If you would have said CBC and NPR, we could have that conversation, because then those are apples to apples. But what you did, you're actually comparing two things that aren't the same. CNN and Fox are definitely two places that are on opposite sides of like the political spectrum, and that is their mandate, that they support their bases. But CBC is a Canadian, public national broadcast. That's a different thing than a CNN.
Absolutely, they're paid advertisers dictate what they say, and probably CNN and CNBC. But the Liberal government was in for the last 9 years, so they had a hand in what gets propagated on the CBC.
Oh, did they?
My opinion.
Oh, okay. Opinions are different than facts, but I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely.
This is such a fun conversation. We're 30 minutes in, or 25.
Wow.
I just want to say something, Glenn, real quick here. This is exciting, a lot of fun. Personal development's such a fun thing. The reality is this CBC channel, this show, is broadcasting to millions, right? Millions of people are seeing this information. All four of us could watch that and get a completely different narrative and a completely different idea because of our internal mindset, our reflection, our thoughts. There's nothing CBC can say that can piss Glenn off or Kirby off. The only thing that can piss Glenn and Kirby off is Glenn and Kirby.
That is true.
It's internal.
It's internal.
Right?
Yes.
It's always a look within. That's the way I always look at that stuff.
Right, that's huge. It absolutely is. And it's one of those questions too. If something is said and it does trigger you, instead of the lash out, it's to be, why is that bothering me? Why does a gender neutral bathroom bother me? Why does how one child want to live their life? Why does that bother me? Like, and we start to ask those real questions and are okay with finding out the answers, and then digging in, and this personal development and personal growth actually happens. But oftentimes we get triggered, we get upset, and then we're like, well, that's the problem. And now I want to lash out over there. When truly, like you just said, Corey, hard question that you ask, you need to ask yourself, why does that bother me? And why am I so fired up about this thing that maybe has no effect on my life, but yet I'm bothered? Why? And those are the questions for yourselves, right? But what is the root of that?
I gotta compliment you right now, Jesse. I read a book last year, Five Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell. Such a phenomenal book. And something I look at doing, there's 5 levels. There's positional, permission, production, personal growth, and then pinnacle for the 5 levels of leadership. I've been trying to tap into the idea of personal growth always being something that I'm always talking about and thinking about. I can just feel that you embody that 4th level so well. The ability for you to ask the questions when Kirby's talking and Glenn, and just in these like 2 of us you just met, me you met last year, but like you're just able to just go through it, right? Like what experiences in your life have got you to that level of leadership and confidence and just who you are as a person to have that type of calmness.
I think what a lot of things that have happened is I've made many errors, and a lot of my life has been front facing too. So like making errors, but making them publicly. And so when it's out there like that, I have to be able to ask myself these same questions, and then and kind of just like walk it back on what happened. And usually it's just like there's an emotional piece that happened, and I think I've given myself grace to make errors. And also just knowing, like, I believe that I believe everyone's good at their core. I can't ever look at a baby picture and be like, that's an asshole. Like, never, right? But something happens from baby to where we are now. But the things that happen, usually external things, and then they become internal truths, and then we start to live them, and they feel like they're a part of our DNA. But ultimately, I think all of us are good at the core, and I always wanted to just ask questions to find out how did we get to this place. So if we're not in agreement on something, which is totally fine, but I'd like to find out where did something like this happen, specifically when we talk about like basic human decency with people who are just different on a base of how they speak, how they look, how they dress, how they identify, all of those. When something happens there, I love to find out when and why, right? When and why. And the best place to do that is just to ask questions. Instead of telling people, I might even know, right? Okay, here's a fun one. Like, so I own some fitness back in the day. People come to my fitness studio and we do the whole questionnaire. But literally the second they walk in, I can just see how they walked. Like if maybe their gait's a little different, I can see some contralateral differences in their body. Like I already know what they need. I know what it is. I know the prescription, but I can't tell them that. They need to tell me that, right? So I need to be able to have a process of questions that will have them arrive at the answer I already know, but it needs to be their choice, their decision. And when it is, then the walls aren't up. It's not defensive anymore. So oftentimes it's just this process of asking questions to either get to a destination that I either already know, or we both get to a new one that I wasn't even aware existed. And all of those are good. So usually it's just an uncovering of new information and just being patient enough to ask and listen.
Wow. If I could drop a mic right now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. You know, I read another book last year called How to Win Friends and Influence People, probably one you've read.
Yeah.
You know, and it's you nailed one thing there. You know, lead people, like lead a horse to water, let them drink.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And that's just it. You're just asking the questions to get them there, you know?
Yeah.
How thirsty are you? How,
Yeah.
you know, and you're just getting that information because all the answers are already within. You know, and I think another challenging mindset is when you go into a situation or circumstance, like you already know where it's going to go, right? You're going to a webinar that you've been on 100 times and you're like, oh, I already know what they're going to talk about. You've then closed your mind to opening and learning new things because you've already checked out, you're on your phone, you're doing this, you're doing that. And that's one thing I love about our podcast, to be honest. You know, we came here with no agenda today. So no one knew. You know, all the minds are open. We're ready to have fun, and just watching where this is going is a ton of fun. So
yeah, it is. It's interesting, and I love these kind of conversations because I'm also forced to deal with my own bias when that happens, right? So like this conversation, no idea where it was going to go. But then when we started getting into the conversations, it's this idea like Kirby, I've had like many conversations that like we've had, and Glenn very similarly. And a good chunk of them go one way, but and a very few of them go a different direction. So for me, I have to be like, even though I know a good chunk of them go this way, that doesn't mean Kirby in my conversation is going to go there. But I could feel in my body where it normally goes, right? So I have to like take a second and still just listen. Let's just see where we're going. Let's see if Kirby is pushing buttons to push buttons sake, or if this is what's in Kirby's DNA. But like giving, you know, like finding those things out. So I do like those, and every conversation there's an opportunity to grow even more. And then Kirby, another thing came into my mind because you've brought it up a couple of times. So like I produce film and television, and we were talking about let's make money together. Like there's a couple of films that are in development right now that will help people learn a ton of stuff. Also, they're amazing thrillers and they're great and they're gonna fill up box offices, and that's what we need to talk about. I'm gonna send you a deck about one of them. You're gonna look out for something called Love Bomb.
I'm loving it. I told you from the beginning I was gonna love it. I told you if I get pushing the wrong buttons, I loved it.
Only reason I say that because I love the show pushes buttons. I know you like pushing buttons, so I'm already like, this is if I had to pick the project, there's the project. Yeah.
For some reason, Jesse, I've come to accept it's the best way that I learn. I have stimulating conversation. Most people don't run fast enough for me. I can clearly see you do, and I can appreciate that. So it's been wonderful. So my next one is Jesse. I didn't even look at what your age is. I'm 47. I don't want you to tell me because it's already perfect. I can see roughly how old you are. Even though you're in ethnicity, it's deceiving because you guys look a little younger with darker skin, I find.
Yeah, you know what? Do you want to know why? I'll tell you why. This is fun. Like there's that saying where folks are like, "Oh, black don't crack," and folks joke around about it. But here, let's be realistic here. So my skin color, the melanin in my skin, and most black people, is a SPF range from 8 to 12. So it's basically like I have sunscreen on from birth at least an 8 to 12. That in addition with the amount of moisturizing that I do that you probably don't do. Some folks do, but for the most part, that alone is one of the main reasons why there's less wrinkles. So all of my melanin deficient folks out there that are listening, the secret is in the bottle. You can just put sunscreen on every single day, take care of your skin, a little exfoliation, maybe some microdermabrasion. Guys, don't be afraid of it. There's nothing wrong with going to get a little more collagen in your skin to look nice and beautiful. All of these things will have you just glowing and looking young. That's a commercial.
It sounded like commercial.
I call them little tools I've learned over the years, but I'm going to give you some information and then I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
I almost think I know the answer. So the beauty of it is, here goes. I'm Inuit. My bloodline, I'm Inuit. What age do you think I am?
47.
Not that I told you. But the end of the day is my wife is elderly, more wiser than me in age. And everybody thinks I'm older than her. It's just she takes care of herself. She puts the sunscreen on, all of these components. But the point being about age is that Jesse, what does retirement look like to you?
Oh, yeah. So it's funny because when I graduated from university in 2002, and I right then, and then I went to be a professional athlete afterwards. Right around then, I was talking to different retired folks about either they were retired or they're about to retire. And a lot of our conversations were like, well, what are you going to do now? And a lot of the answers were all the things they wanted to that they didn't. And they were very excited. And I remember at that, it was like mid-20s. I'm like, why are we waiting? Why would you wait? And that was the moment where I'm like, I want to be professionally retired for the rest of my life. And I have been since then. And so what does retirement look like to me? No different. It's this. I'm having chats, podcasts. We're making movies,
We're
investing.
brothers, man. I don't care what anybody says. Me and you are brothers. Because I've been retired ever since I learned that myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're happy doing what you want, isn't that retirement?
That's right. That's right. This is it. There's nothing changes. There's no thing that changes. Maybe I can't even, I'm trying to think of what would change. And the only thing that would change is that all three of my kids are older. So like the responsibilities in that world would change, but that's just time. Life looks very similar. But I want more of it and I want to learn. I don't want to keep it the same because next year will be different and I'll learn new things and grow. But essentially trajectory is what it looks like till I take my last breath.
So the reason why I love and I want to listen to your book to learn some of the experiences you have, because I might learn from it, because one of the first things you said at the beginning of this show was you love connecting with people, right? I believe I've been so blessed with the network of people I've built that are my partners now. If you're sweeping my floor out back, you're my partner. Mm-hmm. If I don't treat it as such, I'm at fault, not you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
To me, everybody's equal, no matter your paycheck, no matter your destination, no matter your intention. And this journey that I've been on, it connected with me right at the beginning when you open up. So you want to connect with people, because over the years, what I've learned through people is that, for example, when I ask some people, what does retirement look like? I get this euphoria when they start off with the money concept first. Mm-hmm. Well, you see, I'm going to need this much money. Right. I'm like, well, you should have came to me sooner. I'll help you get there sooner. Like, when did you think that was going to happen? Because I'll cut the time in half for you. Because it's doable. If you're going to base your decisions on money and not connections with people, you're not in my group. You're not in my group because.
And also, you can get there. You can make that money, and then you'll show up still lacking. Because absolutely, yeah.
So no, I love those similarities of how some people, and everybody's entitled to a perspective. Mm-hmm. Due to lack of education or lack of want, if we don't want to learn about it, we're not going to learn about it.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I just got out of a meeting with a partner that's having some troubles, and again, it's been repeating itself where I'm still trying to educate him on, like, he needs to focus on what's best for him, not our company, like him first. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of it, most of the time, kind of balances out, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Agreed.
Jesse, Kirby, that's a good segue into some things I picked up on Jesse's TED Talk, where words matter, and being connected, and like intention, and then like where there's a lot of times there's lack of empathy or lack of understanding and lack of consideration, right? And I wonder if you could just dig into that a little bit more, because that was very interesting on the TED Talk.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's this idea, I mean, in the TED Talk, and it's grown since then too, it was a while ago, but that idea of that words matter. Yeah. And I mentioned, sticks and stones can break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And I'm like, that's a full-on lie. Like, words actually hurt. They have weight. They matter. What we say matters. And one of the big things that happens a lot of the time is this intent versus impact kind of conversation.
There you go.
Right? People will like say, hey, my intention was just this thing. And so, but I'm like, that's your intention actually doesn't matter. And I mean this. I think intention is trash. What matters is impact. So impact matters. So if I didn't intend, like if I intended to just have a fun conversation, but the impact was that I actually hurt Kirby's feelings, I hurt him, then what I did hurt him. And so that means even if my intention wasn't to do that, I need to switch my tactics. My tactics are creating pain, and my intention was just to have fun. So once we start to understand and like take on, like, my impact is all that should be the barometer of how I do something the next time. Intent is just for me to feel better. if you knew me, Kirby, you know that I'd never do that. Like I'm the least hurtful person ever. Like, well, but the proof's in the pudding. You just hurt me, right? So we need to take some ownership of the impact of our actions. And I think that's one thing that doesn't happen a lot. That needs to. Businesses do it all the time as well. Like, look, we would never hire a racist person. We're the least sexist company. We would like all of that stuff. Like, but look what just happened. So maybe we should be, hey, look at the impact of what we did caused this pain. And soon as that happens, the person who was impacted feels seen. They feel like it's not a fake apology. Like it's there's this acronym that I use called AIR, right? So this idea of, if by chance someone hurt me, I'm like, we need to get some air. So the air, A stands for like acknowledge what just happened. So we're acknowledging the impact of what happened, and then the R is like a resolution. And this is even perfect for like relationships. If there's a misunderstanding, like, hey, honey, I acknowledge what I just did caused this thing. This was the impact of what I did. Regardless of my intention, I'm acknowledging this action caused this impact. And how I'm going to fix that is this is my resolution for it, so it doesn't happen in the future. You hear that happen, you feel like, wow, this is not just, hey, sorry, honey, it won't happen again. That's a different story. One of them sees like, oh, you see what you did, how it caused pain, and what you're going to do differently in the future. Like those are how you move through some of the disagreements that happen, as well as when we make an error, even though our intent was good.
And there was another thing I noticed, and I still don't get it. And I googled it actually. You mentioned when you told us the story where you lied about your getting your leg smashed up and all this kind of stuff. And
yeah.
there was a term you used. There was a synapse gap.
Oh, the synapse gap.
Yeah.
Oh, well, a synapse gap. I don't remember what I said specifically in the TED talk, but a synapse gap is just like, so you have a neuron and a receiver, and the gap in between it. So in our brain, when messages are being shot, so like my schooling back in the day was psychology and neurobiology.
Okay.
So it's just like how like electricity shoots through our brain. So the longer the gap, the longer time that takes. We're talking like milliseconds, obviously, and the closer it is. So that's the synapse gap. It's just this. It's just the space in between here. But yeah. But the lie thing when I was talking about empathy,
yeah.
I have to go on that one because it sounded like, hey, when you were lying to the people. It was on purpose, everybody. I was lying on purpose.
Yes.
This, I said that I was snowboarding or something like that, and then I wasn't paying attention, and I hit a tree. My leg snapped in half, and my femur came right through my skin, and it was shooting blood left, right. And then everybody that I'm saying this to is like, ugh, like they're
they felt something.
Sounds, and I could see them, and I'm like, sorry, everybody, I lied. But I lied on purpose because I don't know any of you, but some of you had actual visceral reactions to what I was saying. Some of you were audibly disgusted. You felt for me. You wished that I would stop talking. You had empathy for me, right? Some of you didn't care. You didn't say anything. Also fine, right? But there's a reason why that you had empathy. That's that feeling that we want to be able to have for people we don't know. Like you wanted that pain to stop in the story of a stranger, right? But then we have to ask ourselves, how come we don't have that same level of empathy for different communities? Why is it okay that certain things happen to different countries that look a certain way? Or why do we not have the same empathy for trans children? Like this also, then you ask, why do I not care in the same way? And that's where those questions turn inwards, right? We want to find, and so that was the example that I used when I was just working with empathy, just to see how we feel differently. And not to say you're right or wrong, but to say, why don't I feel it this way? And I do feel it over here. Yeah, Kirby, go ahead.
You're blowing my mind right now. Like, where have you been all my life, Jesse?
Just
I want to do it. I want to do it. Like I call what you just described an experiment, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Watch this, Corey. I'm proud of you.
That's nice.
It doesn't have to be that difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It does not have to be that difficult, world.
Yeah.
Just step back. Stop picking your narrative before you even get there.
Yeah, it's big.
It's not difficult.
Kirby, can I jump in there? Because that actually reminds me of something. So when you just, two things. One, just telling Corey I'm proud of you. Like things like that we don't do enough, right? We think them, we don't say them. More so men, by the way. But like being able to, yeah, that's back to the vulnerable and available. But another chunk of this is this idea, this practice of looking in the mirror at the end of the day and being able to say, I love you and I'm proud of you. Simple words, but so hard to do because as soon as we say it, our mind, if I say I love you, and then my mind will be like, yeah, do you? Because what about this? Or I'm proud of you, but are you proud of our own negative mind chatter self-sabotages us so quick. But we have to get comfortable being able to love ourselves and being proud of ourselves so that we can actually, exude that outward. It's hard to do that. If I don't love myself, how am I going to love properly if I can't love myself? And we don't do a lot of that self-work, which I think is super important.
How many business partners do you have right now?
How many business partners do I have right now? Oh, well, I guess it depends on all the different projects that exist. So I
Just
don't
take
know.
a guess. Just take a guess.
Like eight.
Gotta be number 11.
Yes, you can, Kirby.
Yeah. You're gonna make me another $1,000,000. I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's how simple it is. Energy, vibration,
yeah, I love it.
Manifestation.
Yeah.
I wish I learned it earlier in my career, because when I did psychology in Quebec City, I fell in love with it.
Yeah, it's great.
I fell in love with it. Like we haven't even scratched the surface.
Oh, I know. It's very cool. I mean, I took psych and neurobio specifically when I was younger because I was an athlete and I wanted to just learn about my brain and how to harness it a little bit more, right? That was the initial. It wasn't to become a psychiatrist or psychologist or counselor, but I took it and I loved it, and I still use the things, even though, and I keep up with it because I love continued education. But yeah, for me, it's just fascinating, right? Just understanding like the science of my brain, but also the theories of my brain and how do they coincide. And I just love learning. It's just fun.
Do you remember an exact point when I raised my tone earlier?
Oh yeah, that's 1000%, right? And even when you're like, I hope you don't get angry. I'm like, Kirby, how are you feeling right now? You seem a little fired up. Yeah.
You neutralized me.
That was the point.
Neutralized me, man. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. I did it on purpose.
Sure.
He tells himself that. Yeah. Oh yeah, I did that. I put the wrong word there on purpose.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm making myself feel good.
Emotions.
Yeah.
I'm still learning me.
Kirby, it's okay. Be vulnerable, making errors.
Yeah.
It's fine. You got heated and you're still loved. It's fine.
Jesse, I got a question. How do you square up Edmonton and the Hearts? Because when I think about Edmonton, I don't think about the Hearts. I think about the athletic part that you're involved in, but I don't think about the Hearts.
Yeah, so that's great. Actually, Edmonton, probably one of the biggest theater communities on earth. It's got I think the second biggest fringe in the world. Edmonton is a huge artsy community, but it makes sense because it's like cold in the winter, and there's like we go to things like we have.
You want to go inside.
I feel like Edmonton's the biggest town ever, so it's like over 1 million, but we all show up for stuff. If we're doing Taste of Edmonton or Folk Fest, 80% of the city goes. Like we're there. Like so, it's very. I feel it's quite the opposite. It's a very arts-minded community. Obviously sports are there. We have our two teams. But I don't know. I felt growing up, and even just the community and the opinion on Edmonton, like a Winnipeg, like cities like that are often very artsy. When there's not a lot of other stuff that they maybe hang their hat on.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. And also even there's so many stories that come out of cities like that. Like, why do people end up there? So everyone has their own story, but you go to the most populated northern city on earth, there's gonna be some real stories there that people want to tell. So yeah, I find it's creative and artistic.
And why did they change from the Eskimos to the Elks?
Well, interesting. The Elks were the first name before the Eskimos. So a lot of folks are like, why would we do that? But again, some Googling and looking, the Elks were what they were called before they were the Eskimos. And then they made the change from the Eskimos to the Elks. Again, very similar on why many pro sport teams opted to move away from, whether they be racially disparaging images or words and make the right choice. I mean, listen, from the beginning of time, we have always been moving progressive. There's no time where we haven't, right? So there's no error. I like being on the right side of history personally, and there's being extra aware and open to knowing that you might have to make some changes as you move forward. Ultimately, only does good. It just shows that we've taken the shell off. We're available to hear, to listen, to see how we can improve. It's just about taking off the shell, and I'm here for anyone who's doing that. Professional sport teams, people, businesses.
That's
the debate to be continued on that part. But it should be taken out of the darkness into the light. It should be discussed in a proper format so that the proper data comes out.
Yeah, I mean, lots of folks have issues with even the name change, right? Yeah. And then I look at myself. So my grandfather is Rolly Miles. He is the CFL Hall of Fame, played for the Edmonton Eskimos at the time. All of his records, 3 Grey Cups in a row. If anyone's got Elk/Eskimo blood in their DNA, that's me, right? You know what I mean? And what would my grandfather have said who played for it? He would have been like, Jesse, I don't care what they call it. Pay me my paycheck.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like, so a lot
Give
of
me
folks
my money.
all up in arms about some things that, again, you ask yourself, why does this bother me? Always take it back to that same question. Why am I so fired up about this name?
Yeah.
Why does it bother me so? Yeah.
I got one other thing, and then I'm done. Progressive Bitcoin is progressive. Just yes or no answer.
Bitcoin is progressive. Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
like
it.
by definition, for sure it is. You know, oh,
All right.
you got to. It's funny. I had two of those, and I lost them both, Glenn. I had two actual Bitcoins. This is early, like 2010, and somebody tried to come to my fitness studio and pay for training with them, and I was like, ah, sure.
No.
And they were worth like nothing. And when we moved and changed, I'm like, where are my coins? I know there's no chance I would have still had them. I would have seen that thing go up and down. I'd have cashed in years ago. I know who I am. There's no way I'm still hanging on to them. So I'm
You'd
not.
have got out in time.
I would have got out when they were like
Said.
150, $500. I'd have been like, oh, sweet, I'm going to the casino. 100%,
Okay.
I would not have them.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
That's awesome. Well, hey, you know what? We're getting close to the end of the podcast here. Jesse, when it comes to, I know you do some speaking for corporations and businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that entail? How does someone are you looking for more businesses to do that for? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I work my agency is called the Talent Bureau. And so like if you Google Jesse Lipscombe speaking or you go to thetalentbureau.com or thelipscombe.com, I'm super easily findable. But yeah, I do a lot of different companies, many different topics. The Art of Doing, also what my book is. So some motivational, inspirational, let's get our world together and be the best versions of ourselves kind of talks. Also some DEI work, diversity, equity, inclusivity, even some of the chats we're having here. All of these things I do with businesses, whether it be workshops or seminars or keynotes. So yeah, easily findable, somewhat bookable, depending on when you get me. And I'm always down to have these conversations on any platform I can. So I appreciate this one, Corey.
Of course. Oh, thank you, Jesse. I'm gonna say this right now. So Kirby's got a business of 15 to 50, 100 people. Who knows who could be there at something that you go to teach. If his intention was to say bring Jesse in to do some sort of speech or something like that in a construction business, what kind of impact would you be focused on going there? Would you communicate with Kirby beforehand, or
Oh yeah,
what would that look like?
Like, so I'd say this, 80% maybe, it's always Pareto's law, right? 80-20, but I'd say 80% of the conversations that happen in businesses are often they're like a Band-Aid, they're a reaction. So usually something's happening within the workplace that they've struggled with. And so they bring me in as outside help to have those conversations. And oftentimes even just having an outside third party, folks are more open to have conversations they wouldn't have had with their boss. Be right, like they might be fearful of saying something, but they can say it to me. So like those happen a lot of the time. No matter what it is, we have a chat beforehand. We discuss what the speech will be about, what the presentation is about, and we tailor it specifically for whatever company. The other 20% are the opposite side, where folks are like, listen, it's the beginning of the year or whatever the case is, and I really want to bring this to my team because I have this objective for later on. So sometimes Band-Aid, other times here, we're going to do this proactively because this is our plan for the year. No matter what it is, we do, we'll meet beforehand, we'll have the discussion, we'll tailor it, make something that is specific to the group, and then we go from there. Kirby!
I got a need for your service. I'll get my office manager to email you if you're okay with that, or Talent Bureau.
Yeah, you can email me and I can CC him, whatever the case is. You should email me anyway because we have stuff to talk about. But then, yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to give you a quick outline because hopefully the girls will see this. So my old office manager is moving up to be right underneath me because I create so much daily activity that I just can't follow it. And then the next lady below my old office manager is moving up to office manager. But we're kind of stuck in a rut right now of how do we get to where we need to go? And I don't really have, I think, the psychology skill to get us there. Like I made the one girl cry yesterday.
Were you doing that on purpose?
Yes, I always do everything on purpose. Like
yeah. So don't make her cry.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it was good. She only took her like 2 minutes because she called my BS this time. Because what I did was I said, oh, by the way, I rented an office down the street. And my old office manager, I went like this: you need to clean this stuff up and move down there this afternoon. So then the new office manager, about to be, got emotional because he's like, no, you can't take her away from me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I know everybody's telling me I got to stop doing it, but Jesse, I'm good at it.
You're good at making people cry.
No, I'm good at pulling emotions out of people.
And Kirby's family is gonna love this podcast.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, like I love Kirby. Are you married? Are you married? Do you have kids?
Yes and yes. Kirby, you've given yourself so many self awards. You should check in with the folks that you are making mad and making you cry, that are crying, and see if they also want to co-sign said awards.
Maybe your job is already done, but I'm gonna pay you to come do that.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh man, so Jesse, you can just coach Kirby one-on-one. I think we got to figure it out here.
Kirby, legit, that's great. That's
Glenn has been trying. But
the results are varied.
Yeah.
Glenn watches CBC and then he talks to Kirby.
I don't watch any more mainstream media. All my data is from external sources.
Glenn, you've been the best operational manager I have ever worked with.
I mean, I'm going to say this at risk of possibly not working with you. Hopefully it doesn't go that way. But I'll tell you something that what I think is neat and I love. Like I see you, Kirby, and I see the protective walls that you have up. There's so many of them, and they're like marinated in jokes. They're marinated in like, this is just how I am, and it keeps people at bay. It keeps people at bay, and you can be safe here. But like, I'm very excited to find out who's behind that. And we talk about authenticity, and I can't wait to take the walls down. I'm not saying what you're offering isn't authentic, but you're giving such a small percentage of it for the world, and that's something you can control and you can manage. And I see it, and I love it. But I can't wait.
Jesse talks about fear a lot.
So Glenn, you said it best yesterday. I think Jesse just did it. I think he complimented me and insulted me at the same time.
Beautiful.
So you're saying that Kirby's got to shed a lobster shell here?
Oh man, yeah, he's comfy. And your shell's, Kirby, your shell's big. So you're like one of those big lobsters. You're like, what do I need to do it for? But yet you're full, man. You need to break that shell off. Is what's happening.
I love it, man. Thank you for entering my life. I'll be forever indebted to you. Even if we don't ever talk to you ever again, you have just brought me so much joy.
Yeah.
And I'm forever indebted to you. Thank you so much.
Kirby, I appreciate you. Thanks for letting us just jam a little bit. It was nice. Corey, I appreciate you having me on the cast.
Of course, Jesse. No, thank you so much. And, like we said at the beginning, if you want to learn a little bit more about Jesse, check out YouTube, check out Wikipedia, all that stuff. I know he's in a few Netflix shows. I've watched a few, and his new book, Art of Doing. You got to get it. Listen to it on Audible. Kirby can't read, so he's got to do the Audible. But the physical copy, you can go to your bookstore, buy it, and take it home with you, and you won't regret it. So thank you so much, Jesse and Kirby, Glenn. Always great to have you guys. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Soon, team. All right.